Welcome back to my channel, fellow gardeners. Today I'm going to talk about the jade plant, and we'll put the name below. Now, the thing about the jade plant is a very popular plant and people do love it only because of the shape, and it is a succulent, easy to take care of. Now, what I thought today, let's talk about the jade plant and I'll show you how to propagate it. And we can do a stem propagation and a leaf propagation, and then we can have a chat about the plant care. So welcome back to my channel. My name's Alice. I'm the Red Soul Gardener. I'm going to take a cutting at the moment. It's Ruster. Here we go. Take one cutting, and I'll just put that there. And I take a cutting from here. So I've got my two cutting. Let's go and get on with it. Now, this is a jade plant, as I mentioned before, and they do even call it a money plant or a lucky plant. Now, the beautiful thing about it, first of all, it is a succulent. And then the beautiful thing about it, it is so good for beginners. And once you do learn how to propagate it, to prune it, it is easy maintenance, and you can make a lot of babies out of this one particular plant. Now, once you do have a plant, a jade plant like I have at the back, and I do have another one, what sort of light requirement does it like? I find that with my jade plant is that, first of all, it does like a bright indirect light. But I have another one which is actually grown in a shaded area, and it's actually doing well, except it's a bit more, this is the one, it's a bit more greener than the one which was in sort of partial sun, because there we get the afternoon sun, and because of the compactness is that there is a bit of shade, but both of them are doing really well. Now, once you do have your jade plant in sun or exposed to light, what happens is you get this lovely color at the tips, and it is so beautiful, you know, and that's what I love about jade. It just gives that sprinkle of something exotic to it. Now, what I noticed with my other plant, the one I had it more in shade, it did not get that lovely tip of reddish purple at the tip. But other than that, I'm okay with it. So basically, as I mentioned, is that jade plant being very popular is some people do have it as an indoor plant. Now, when you do have it as an indoor plant, do put it either in a west or east window where it gets sun, or in a south-facing window. Now, what happens is that if a jade plant gets all lanky, and the internode, which is this area between the nodes, it's known as an internode, it starts elongating the spaces. That means your plant is not actually getting enough light. Is that a normal jade plant is that if it's comfortable with the light, is that the spacing are usually quite small, as opposed to having it really long. So if you do have it as an indoor plant, make sure it does get adequate amount of light, because otherwise also it will bend towards the light, and it will go this way and it will topple over. So do move your jade plant around your house and see where it feels comfortable, that you basically don't have a long spacing between the two nodes, and that it isn't lanky and it's not bending towards the sun. What happens if your plant is lanky and it's bending towards the sun? Now, basically you cannot repair that. Now, what I would suggest you do, just go to your jade plant and snip it, which will show you, and carry out a propagation on that particular plant, and it will grow. So in the end, is instead of throwing out the plant because it's lanky and it's bending towards the sun, you can actually propagate and get many more jade plants. Now, what is the water requirement for the jade plant? First of all, you have to remember that the jade plant is a succulent. And the beautiful thing about succulents is that, first of all, they are tolerant once they do settle, drought tolerant. But then the beautiful thing about it is that they do store water in their leaves and in their stem. So basically, if it is a situation where it hasn't been watered for a long time, it does have extra reserves. Now, what happens is that I would actually, once you do actually take your jade plant and you water it, make it go 2 times. The first time, let the water drench right through, put it aside for a little while and give it a second drench. In that way, the soil absorbs the moisture and you're good to go. Second thing is that in order for you not to get root rot, because they are prone to root rot, is make sure you do your finger test. It's the best test ever to know whether you should actually water your plant again. What I did in the beginning is that I used to water my plants, overwater my plants, because I always felt that these babies actually need the water, because basically that is what a plant needs. Now what happens is that when you do not do a finger test, is that you're never sure whether the pot is actually dry or if it's still saturated with water. Once I did discover the finger test, which is simple, put your finger in the soil about 1 inch down. If it's wet, don't water. What you should do with the jade plant is make sure you do your finger test to ensure that once you do water it, is that the soil is completely dry, because you don't want to get root rot. Now what happens is, there are 2 ways you can kill a plant, as we know. You can either overwater or underwater. And I always do believe that your plant will always talk to you. Now, the beautiful thing about the jade plant is how it talks to you when it's underwatered is basically these leaves, because now it's eating into that reserve, is they do get crinkled. You know, you see a crinkling, it's not so smooth. Then you look at the plant and say, it's time to water. Maybe I haven't watered it for a while. But that's another thing you have to take note. Now, if you haven't watered for a long time, your leaves will go yellow like this. And you can see the crinky leaf, and it's gone yellow because it hasn't received any water. And what happens with the yellow leaves, they just drop off. So if your plant has actually, the leaves are starting to dry, you know, going crinkly, and then they pop off, that means you've underwatered your plant. Now, the other thing is that if you've overwatered your jade, as we know, the jade plant does store water in its leaves. Now, what happens is that the plant is, the soil is saturated, you once again do water the plant. So what happens is that that water gets pushed into the leaves and then it starts to rot. So basically where you get root rot or you get your leaves getting soggy and mushy is because you've overwatered it and you can kill that plant. So just be careful with overwatering any succulents. So what sort of soil do you require for a jade plant? First of all, it is a succulent, and you know, with succulents you need to have a really good, well draining soil, because basically they don't want to get water on their feet or let's say on their roots, because they will suffer from root rot. So what sort of mixture would you have? Now basically this is the sort of soil I make, which is basically a lot of pumice in there, a bit of potting soil for its nutrients, and then what you do is that I have holes in this. It has to be well draining. So if I pour, most of the water will come off. And in that way, at least the soil will, the pot won't sit there and we get waterlogged. So once you've got your soil for your succulent, is I would actually, what I find actually more suited for succulents is I would put it in a clay terracotta pot, because in that way, at least in a way, is that because the clay is porous and it does breathe and evaporate, it's far better to have it in a clay soil than in a plastic pot, because plastic pots always keep that moisture for longer time. So I would do it in a terracotta pot, and also have your good, well-draining soil in there. And then once you do have your pot, ensure, again, for succulents or for any other plant, is do have your drainage holes there. So once you do water, the water does go through and it doesn't sit in the soil. Now, the thing about jade plants, which is quite interesting, is like the plant that I have at the back, is sometimes you get one branch popping up and then another one doesn't pop up that quickly. And so you may get this haphazard hairstyle. Now, what you can do with that plant is pruning, just to get its shape, and so it actually looks beautiful and presentable. Now, the beautiful thing about pruning a jade plant is that once you're pruning it, you're actually creating a situation that you're creating branches. So once your jade plant is small, as in this, if I do cut the jade plant and use that bit for propagation purposes, what happens with a jade plant is that on the at the node where you do make your snipping, you will get two branches happening. What I'm going to do if I was pruning or creating a bushy plant, I just go below the node and I snip it off. Now what happens here is at that node is you will get two branches forming, which actually will make your plant much more bushier. Now, the thing about jade plants is that, again, if you have it as an indoor plant, is if it's where you don't want it to go facing, bending towards the sun, is basically just simply always rotate it every few days like that. So each section does get enough light, and in that way you avoid it from looking for the sun and also bending over. Now, the other thing about jade plants, sometimes like the ones I have at the back, they are quite big. Now, what happens is that the stem can get quite tall and it may may tip over. So you can actually stake it so that the plant doesn't tip over. The other thing you can do is just get a bigger pot and put it there and just stabilize it. In that way, a bigger pot will stabilize the plant and it won't do the tipping over or the falling over. What I would do is when your plant does get bigger, and we've done so many repotting because we do sometimes forget about that plant. So every 2 or 3 years, do check your jade plant and make sure it's not root bound, as we've seen with so many of my plants, where you sort of look at it and you think, oh, it's okay. But once you do open it, once it does, you notice that the plant no longer is growing, it's sort of like stunted growth, and you're wondering what is happening, is do think about repotting a plant every 2-3 years. In that way, once you do uproot it and repot it into a bigger pot, you will realize that most probably the plant has exhausted all that nutrients in the soil and it's just the root that is operating. So do be careful about that and do look out for that. The other thing about the jade plant, it just doesn't like drafts. Like, for example, if it's during the cold season, you've opened up the window and the jade plant is there, it doesn't like that. And second thing is that if it is like summer and you put it on a window that you get really full sun coming in, you may scorch your leaves. And also moving the jade plant too much from cold to warm, it doesn't like a sudden change in temperature. So once you can sort that out, you're good to go. Another thing I'd like to say that the jade plant doesn't like, quite a little fussy little thing, is that it cannot tolerate frost. So if you do have your jade plant outside and during the first frost in autumn, the first frost hitting, do take your plant in. It doesn't tolerate, because also with the cold season, do bring it in as an overwinter, bring it into your house and it will be happy. And last thing I'd like to say is that once you do have your jade plant, it does flower and it does have these beautiful white flowers that can surprise you. So do go and get yourself a jade plant. Now I'm going to show you how to propagate your jade plant. So I'll put this one aside. So now what we're going to do is do a simple soil propagation. Now what we need to do is, first of all, you cut your jade plant off your plant and then you callus it. And I've callused this for 2 48 hours, and so basically it's dry there. And so in this way, it's not going to get any fungal, it's not going to get any bacterial sort of thing, and it's not going to get root rot because it's sealed. So what I'm going to do is just, first of all, I'm going to take the plant and then twist these ones and get the leaves. Because once again, is that you can actually propagate the jade plant using its leaf. So just twist it off because you don't need all those leaves, just like that. So basically I have my plant like that. So now my new thing is I'm using these party glasses, and what I've done at the bottom is I've actually made holes. I did this because I'd like to, for the Kenyan, for my Kenyan followers, I feel sometimes it is expensive to get yourself plastic pots, garden pots, but for propagation purposes you can actually use these, and for as long as you make your holes at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is actually add a bit more soil here, and then I will take this plant and just put it in the soil, just like that, and then I will cover it. Just like that, and just firm it up. And getting these plastic party cups actually is good, because in the end, as the plant propagates, you will actually see the rooting to make sure that you know that everything is going okay. So that's one of my propagation there. Now what I did here is on propagation is I did a similar thing with this jade plant. I took two stem cuttings, and I'm going to just actually open it up. I'll keep these ones aside. And basically is so what I'm saying here is with this propagation, I did exactly the same to this. And after 2 months, I did have quite a lot of rooting. So that's one. And also this one. So basically taking a cutting and putting it in soil, you will get rooting and you will get your jade plant. The other method I did is using your leaf for propagation of your jade plant. Now basically is, here we go. This is my little potting mix for my succulents. It's got pumice inside, it's got a bit of potting soil in there, and it's a well-draining soil. So all you do is ensure that when you do have your leaf, that you do have a bit of whatever was attached to the mother plant. I just took it and I just put it in soil like that. Stood it straight, just like that. And we know that this is, in fact, for a lot of the succulents, the echeveras, and when you're doing a leaf propagation, is that it always does work. You can either lie it like this, ensure it's under soil, or you can just simply lie it flat, just like that. And out of this sort of propagation, you will get your babies. So that is one propagation. So now, this is the ones I did with these, which is about, I think these ones are about a month. And so this is the way it forms. My leaf has already got rooting, and I think this baby was actually attached to it. Now I'm going to put the baby back, hope it survives, and put the stem back, because what happens is, as it does propagate, the leaf is, let me just tip this over, is that's where you will get your little baby coming from. Look at this. I think this one had actually stayed a bit longer than that one. But again, here we go. So you get your leaf that I'd actually propagated using that method. And then what happens is, as it's rooting, is right next to it, you get your baby forming. And it's actually attached to the, let's call it the mother leaf. So, fellow gardeners, here we are with our jade plant, and we've done a nice soil propagation here, similar to using the same technique that I use this, which is just simply going into your plant, cutting out your stem, and then let it callus, and then put it in soil. And I think this could be about 6 weeks, or let's say less than 2 months, and you get amazing rooting, and you've already got your baby jade plant. And then what I've showed you is you can do a leaf propagation similar to this. And what happens is that once you do a leaf propagation, you will get a jade baby attached to the leaf, and you've already got your new baby and you're good to go. So thank you so much, fellow gardeners. Thank you for following us and being here with us as we do all this propagation. Don't forget to like, and don't forget to share. Don't forget to press the notification button, and also to subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. And don't forget that we're on Instagram, Facebook, also on YouTube. You can send me messages. I'm always willing to answer any queries that you have, or we just chat sometimes. Thank you so much, and have a lovely day. And do go and get yourself one of these plants, especially if you're a beginner, because they're so easy to multiply and so easy to look after. So thank you so much, and have a lovely day.